Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's video, I show you a paper craft that you can use to add to your junk journals, your scrap journals, your December journals. It's a fun object that you make that looks like old-fashioned tickets to a carnival. I'll make a strip of them, and you can make one or an entire strip, or like I do in the video, 4 or 5 strips. It's kind of addicting to get started. I have a previous video using the theme, Halloween, making strips, and one of my viewers suggested I do it for Christmas. I couldn't wait. I love making these little strips. They're fun, they add a personal element. They'll also be great in card making. So let's get started.
So these are the tickets. They're faux tickets. They look like the kind from old-time carnivals. They're very easy to make and they're very personable. The beauty of this is you use what you have. If you have markers or crayons or colored pencils or paint, that makes this great. If you just have patterned paper, you could make it work that way as well. I want to show you some of the things that I do. I have another video with other versions of this, but for Christmas, I like to make it a little special, so it'll have a little more metallic to it. And all of these steps are optional. So let me show you how I start. So to start with, you'll need paper. You can make one ticket or a strip. I happen to think it's more effective to use a strip, so I just use whatever paper I have. This is an 8.5 by 11, and I like to use cardstock, but paper will work as well. But because it's Christmas time, I want it to be a little extra special. I like to use pattern paper, and the pattern paper that I choose is patterned but not loud. It's subtle colors that just give me a little bit of a background. So this is just gray and white stripes, little candy canes, but kind of in a subdued hue. This is pattern paper of snowflakes. And then I have green, and this is about the loudest I get. And then I cut it into strips. You can cut it into any size strips. I'd say, unless you're making a miniature, 1 inch thick is the smallest you want to go, probably to 2.5 inch. But again, you might want a really thick ticket as a focal point for a layout or a card or a scrapbook page. So do what works for you and modify this technique accordingly. So I have some strips here. Put them this way so you can see them. The next thing you'll need are images. Now you could draw the images on, but I like to make it easy on myself. So I go to my rubber stamps. If you're a rubber stamp user, you have lots of Christmas themes, if that's your thing, and there are some cute ones. You want to use small enough stamps that fit on your strip, but they don't have to be entirely there. You can have your images come off the paper if you want. I like to use cute faces, Santa, angels, this type of thing. And really, you can't beat it with elves. So I'll just take an elf out here. Now, I know that I'm going to color in these images. And because of that, I like to have images that are outlines, ones that I can color in. On occasion, I'll use a filled-in image. But for the most part, I want to use images that I can color in and have fun with it. And you can make this as busy or as simple as you want. I also use a 2 and a 5 to make it, special for the 25th of December. And I like to have some small stamps, stars or snowflakes, little holly images to fill it in. First thing I'll do before I do my stamping, though, is I want to create the tickets themselves. So I just roughly, you can measure this, I just roughly fold it gently, not looking for a big crease. But I can decide if I want the tickets to be this long or if I want to just shorten them up, make short little stubby tickets. I want them approximately the same length each. And again, this is something that they don't have to be. And you can make the tickets different sizes as well. So I'll create all of these strips with the folds. Another way to do it, if you don't want to fold it, is to just take your strip and measure it whatever increment size tickets you want. So this is a little thicker, so this I'll probably do 2.5 inch tickets. And then I just create that line. I'm using pencil here, just because it's easier to erase. Now, once you have your strips with where you want each ticket to be, you take your strip and you want to make your dashed lines where you'd basically tear the ticket if you were the ticket master or the person admitting you onto the ride. And so to do that, I find the line and I just want to make a dashed line. And I just eyeball it, but I use a ruler. Doesn't have to be perfect. This is a faux ephemera and it's supposed to look reminiscent of what we're going for. So the next stage is let's stamp our images. Now I like to take an archival ink, a permanent ink. You don't want a pigment ink unless you're going to take the time to dry it. We'll use a pigment ink to show you a variation in a moment. But I'm just going to take some of this archival ink here, and then I'm going to take the image I want to use. First image I'm going to use is a stamp of a Santa. You can use whichever one you want. And I'll start with just this one ticket. So I ink it up, and I put a magazine underneath my pad here just so that I have a little give for stamping it. And then I just want to put the stamp on each of the tickets. I want the tickets, they don't have to be exact copies of each other, but I want them to look like a roll of tickets. This is a shorter ticket, so I'm just going to have it come off the top. Now I always start with my largest image. So there I have this. I'll do the same thing on the remaining strips. So now that I have my large image on each of the strips, I want to go in there with another image. I want to save the stars and the snowflakes as an accent image that we'll emboss on. So I'm going to set this aside, but I want to put smaller images around these pieces, at least some of the strips that have room. So I'm going to take this 2-5, line it up the way I want, and now I'll add that in, or other small images. And you're kind of starting to fill up each of these little tickets. So when I'm happy that I have my images mostly full, but not completely, and again, make this personal, so fill them up as much as you'd like. I want to go in there and make it a little more bold for Christmas. And to do that, I'm going to take an embossing ink pad. You can use pigment ink as well. And then I have embossing powders, like black and white and gold. They come in all sorts of colors. There's silver and brass and so on. They make it a little more special because of the contrast. I'll show you on one how I do this. So I think I'll use this gold. It's called Old Gold embossing tinsel. How perfect for Christmas. Now, some secrets and tips for using embossing, because we're going to be pouring powder. You want to try and get rid of the static that might exist on your paper. And I do that by just taking some cotton fabric, I fill it with cornstarch or talc, and then I wrap it. So I have a little dabber here, and I just go over the area that I know I'm going to stamp. I'm not trying to leave a big surface of powder, I'm just trying to get rid of the static. Then I have my little snowflake stamp. I'm going to come in here and stamp this little gold snowflake. Start with just 2, and you can only see like a little wetness. It's not really very visible. And then I take the powder, I'm just going to sprinkle it over where I stamped. Move it around, and then I brush it off. So now there's a little bit of stray powder. I just take a brush and gently scrape it off. If you don't mind it, you can leave it. I'll move this. Then I need to take a heat tool. This is an embossing gun or a heat tool. I'll turn it on, it'll make noise. And I'm just going to put the heat onto the area where I have my embossing powder on the snowflakes, and you'll see it melt. So it turns liquidy, looks molten, it's warm, and when it dries, it'll be permanent, slightly raised. So I'll continue stamping and embossing on the rest of these tickets. So now I have embossed on some of them, and on this one there wasn't really room for embossing, but I wanted to show you an alternative. If you didn't want to emboss or you didn't have the embossing supplies, you can just use a gel pen. A metallic gel pen will give you a similar look. So I have some gold, black, and white. And then you could just make images on your piece. I'll use the gold here. So on the snowman here, I'll just kind of create little gold, little swirls, a few of them here. So now the tickets are coming along. Next stage, though, is to color them in if that's what you'd like to do, to add whatever color you want using paint or markers, crayon even, colored pencils. I like to use colored pencils. So I'll just take one of the tickets and color it in and use it as a guide to color in the rest of the tickets. So I'll speed this along just to show you how I do it, my process. I take a darker color just for the edges, and you could take as much time as you want with this. This is where it comes to life. It's little things like this that make it really pop. I like to use about 2 colors, and that gives me nice little shading. But again, you can make this as simple as you'd like. With the reds, I like to start out really rich and dark, and then just gently add in a lighter color. And you can just go over it as many times as you like. And to me, that's the beauty of the colored pencils. And to make the beard really stand out, I like to just go in with a little blue, just on the areas to create a little shadow. And for the hat, I just go in with a little bit of purple on the edges, just to separate his beard from his hat. Then I take a white pencil and I go over all of it, and this softens it even more. So I'll color in all my images, and then you'll start to see it come together and look uniform. So the next step is just to outline these images. And I like to take a gray marker or a gray colored pencil, and I'll just go around each of the images and outline them. I think it just makes it pop a little. You can do this with all the images or just the main ones. And really it depends on each of the tickets what the images are for me. If it's a main image like this, I think that's enough. So now before we actually shape our tickets, I want to come back, and again with my gel pens or markers, I just want to go over and see if there's any space I want to fill in. I want to add some writing, anything of that nature. I like to use my gold, so I'll just come in here and maybe add a few little dots. I just think that adds another little festive touch, kind of make them in the shape of stars. So once you have your tickets as full as you want them to be, now we're going to start to shape them. So to do this, I like to get a hole punch. You can use a standard hole punch. This is a little larger. And I just look at the intersection of where the lines are, and I'll just come in here and clip off a little piece. And I just eyeball it. You can measure it. And I'll do this on each one, on each side. And it may clip off some of your images that you stamped. That's okay. So now the tickets are coming together. You can stop there, but I'm going to show you a few more ways you can embellish them even further. So now I'm going to work on the outline. To do this, you can take a marker, you can take a colored pencil, crayon even, and you're just going to outline the edge. I'm going to use a red marker for my Santa ones, and I just like to go right across the line here. You can see it just outlines it ever so slightly. You can use black as well. I find it easier to do the straight edges first and then go in and carefully do the curved edges. So there I have it outlined. I'll do it in the remainder, and I'll show you one more way to embellish them further. And now for the final step. I like to just ink the edges. This is a tea dye stain. You can use a light gray, light any color really, and then this little brush. So I rub around on the brush, and then you can see if I rub here, I get just a subtle color, not a stamped image. So I'll take that and I'll just rub around the edge. Just looking for a slightly used look, slightly aged. Now, not all of your stamps will warrant this, but if you like that look, just to give a little more dimension, I think it's quite effective. So these are my tickets. I love it. I think they look great in an art journal or junk journal. Christmas December daily, anything like that. I just love the way it looks. It adds a little special touch. It's repeated Christmas images, and you can make them aged or not. You can use all the different colors, the ones that you really like. You can even use your own drawn images. I just think it's a fun treat. It's a little unexpected, and it's very fun to use in your work.
So that's how I make the Carnival-inspired ticket strips for Christmas. I think they're precious. I love that I use my rubber stamps from Christmas, some stickers, gel pens, paint, embossing powders. Anything goes. You can use any or all of it, or none of it. There's lots of variations. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for joining me today.